So welcome everybody. This is, in COVID times, it's probably appropriate that Tony and I are so far apart, but that's actually so you can see the screen and we're not sat in front of it. So welcome everybody, we'll get going as to where we are. As you can see, we're gonna have a little discussion today about the future of modern marketing and is it all about data? There is a view that data can actually be, that marketing can be summed up as in 4 words, great stories well told. But there is a converse view that actually marketing can be summed up in a different way that says if you can't have a conversation about pixels or attribution models, then you're a marketeer of the past. So we're going to have a little conversation about that to see which is which and where we're currently at. More specifically, we're going to answer this question, is the future of modern marketing all about data? My name is Chris Babayode. I'm the Managing Director of the MMA in the EMEA region. And I'm delighted and excited to welcome Tony Holdway here, currently from Pizza Express. And so, Tony, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit more about all the roles that you've had as a CMO in the various sectors you've worked in?
Sure. I've been in retail for much of my career. So brands like WH Smith's, Wickes, Dreams, Mothercare, House of Fraser, and then probably 10, 11 years ago, I was lucky in retail to go to a retailer, Shop Direct, or the Very Group as it is now, which had no stores, had no physical locations. And actually that was probably an amazing learning for me in terms of having to adjust to digital and e-commerce trading, which had always been in those other businesses. But of course, once the shops don't exist, it's those digital metrics and performance are everything. So I guess the last 10 years I've spent doing a combination of both, digital and physical. And then the last 5 years I've worked with a lot of food brands, as in Domino's, Pret, and now Pizza Express, and helped them on that similar digital transformation journey.
Great, thanks Tony. That makes you an expert for our discussion today. So let's put today's discussion into some sort of context. I mean, we know that data in its broadest sense is taking up a significant proportion of the marketing budget, increasing in strategic importance, and that the data ecosystem is a continual state of flux. The number of companies now working in data and attribution has grown significantly. And in this dynamic world with increased regulation, I think it becomes difficult for marketers, their teams and CMOs in order to keep a really good handle on it. The MMA, the Mobile Marketing Association, we a couple of weeks ago launched a think tank. We love an acronym at the MMA, so we've called it DAT, Data in Marketing Think Tank. And this is really geared to marketers in three areas. One is to let them understand better the continually evolving data landscape, almost daily, weekly changes that are going on, help them with their data strategies, and as importantly, in order to help them with their data-centric organizations, because ultimately they're trying to drive their business. And as I was saying to someone just before coming on stage, a CMO who's maybe had a traditional route to becoming a CMO is now recruiting data scientists and having a whole sort of function that was very different from what they were doing many years before. So that's what we're doing, Tony. There is a question behind this. So you and I have talked a lot about data in marketing on a number of occasions. So please share with us and the audience here how the organizations you've been involved with, how at retail, tech, food, restaurants, how they've embraced this whole notion of data and digital transformation.
Well, I think data's important if you're going to use it. I think lots of businesses are still at first based on how to collect it and how to improve their data. But actually, of course, if you don't make use of it in your business, then you're kidding yourselves, really. I think being really simplistic, data should be there to personalize and make your communications more relevant on one hand, so improve your marketing and targeting and efficiency. On the other hand, improve your business, the learnings, the ability to understand, learn and predict what's going on in your business and improve it with broader decisions that are beyond marketing, maybe beyond marketing, I think is the key. Domino's was a business where I was at, which obviously had a lot of data. It had a lot of data because everybody's broadly got to give you their address and name to actually get the stuff delivered in the first place. You've then got a lot of data. You're then working out what to do with that data. You would start by saying if you've last ordered a pepperoni passion, you're probably not a vegetarian. If you've ordered on the last 3 Fridays, you're probably more likely to order this Friday, and we should remind you of that. Or can we get a midweek order off you? If you've never ordered a side or a dessert, maybe we can get you to do that. There are so many things that we could nudge in terms of behaviours as a result of having that data. And if you didn't have that data, of course, you've still got broad-scale marketing messages like this is a new product, or this is out, or this is a new promotion, but you can't really be as personal and relevant as you'd want to be.
Great, and I think you make a great point there around data is there to help drive support marketing, but it's also there to drive the actual business of the organization, which marketers are obviously responsible for. But when we get into data, we then get into a contentious area. Certainly a number of the MMA marketer members that we have told me about this tension that exists between brand marketing and performance marketing. There's tension between different teams of people, there's tension between budget levels, there's tensions between measurement of return on investment. So from your perspective, Tony, against that, what would you, let me just show you this. As I said before, this brand piece around brand marketing, storytelling, we had a famous quote at the MMA that actually brand marketing was all about unicorns and fairies at the end of the rainbow, whereas pixels and attribution and ROI and hard data is really the way to go. So within this tension, what's the sort of experience that you've had as you're a marketer, you're a leader of an organization, you're looking to grow the business. How do you resolve some of those tensions or some of that focus? Is it one or the other? Is it a hybrid? Is it both?
Across the businesses I've been in, there's probably varying states of all the businesses I've been in, the modes that they're in. So I don't know, they're in success mode, they're very successful, or they're in growth mode, or they're in recovery, or they're stabilising, or something like that. In all cases, I would say you need both. You need brand and performance, and broadly, and it's not an exact science, and it will depend on the situation and your objectives, but broadly we would aim for a 60-40 split between brand and performance. And the two need to complement each other. I think the media landscape as a result has really changed. I think it was quite easy, or relatively easy 10 years ago, where you would have a load of brand channels, let's say at the top of the funnel, where you're trying to attract people, make your brand more appealing. And that, 10 years ago would have been large-scale TV, etc. And then down the bottom of the funnel would have been the more performance media, digital, print. And actually those rules have changed. What's made things much more complicated now is that a lot of those digital channels have the reach of the brand channels. Does that make sense? They're further up the funnel. And so it's a trickier media landscape. But for each brand, I suppose each brand I've been at, particularly in the last 5 years, you're trying to work out what channels sit in brand and are doing a job for your brand, and what channels sit in performance, and then how can you alter the content to be most appropriate for both of those.
Right, and I think coming from us later this year is a research paper around how does brand build performance and how does performance build brands. It'd be interesting to see that. But let's just dig a little deeper on one of these aspects around brand/performance, and that's the role of aggregators. In your industry, obviously there are a number of aggregators, Just Eat and Deliveroo, in finance, in cars, in automotive. And I wonder that when a consumer's faced with a choice or a list, what brand attributes do they need to be seeing in order to make the right choice? Is it just about price? Is it just about availability? What are your insights in terms of working with aggregators?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously have experience of aggregators within QSR, within food. I think if we step outside of food for a second, and my knowledge is less there, but I would suggest aggregators are there to clearly benefit the customer, probably benefit the customer on price and choice, but they're there in a more functional way, I'd argue. And I suppose when I'm trying to think in my life when I've searched for home insurance or car insurance, you then you then get presented with a list of brands of which maybe half you've forgotten even existed. You're right, they've stopped their above the line spend and they're sat in an aggregator world, and you're almost reminded of their existence. And so the worry about aggregators from a marketing perspective is your brand loses traction and appeal over time. Being more specific in the world I operate, actually I think aggregators have benefited the customer. I think it's less of a functional choice on what you're going to order. Actually, aggregators have opened up a world of different cuisines. You know, it's beyond just convenience and functionality. It's broadened cuisine appeal, and actually, what we've seen is what's changed is, you know, that classic sort of discussion when you get people around and you look at each other and go, what are we going to eat? What do you fancy? You know, that sort of discussion. So, a portion of customers, and it's growing at a rapid rate of knots, have changed that vernacular to open the aggregator app and then say, what should we pick from here? You know, that's completely changed. You know, and so then as a brand, you've got to sit there and say, well, if we're not on the aggregator, we're not part of the discussion. You won't be a salient brand and you won't get chosen. So I think aggregators, from a customer perspective, I can definitely see the benefit. From a brand perspective, it could be worrying if you then haven't got the funds to communicate what's your brand about and how distinct it is. Over time, that could slip. And I guess the third worry is somebody's got to pay for all of this. So, you know, aggregators are taking a slice of the money, aren't they? And customers are paying, and brands, you know, ultimately somebody's got to pay, and that probably is the customer.
Okay, thanks, Tony. We're going to switch slightly. I'm sure we're all familiar with the phrase needs must. So in these times and continuing times, a lot of marketing companies, a lot of marketers have had to pivot significantly their business. I mean, the consumer behaviors that we're now seeing digitally, mobile, are here to stay. People's businesses have pivoted, and I think all the marketing members of the MMA, without exception, have had digital type projects delivered in days and weeks, when historically it would have taken maybe months, even years. So the question coming out of that around pivoting during this pandemic is, of the things that you're involved in, what have you learned? What's here to stay? What are you going to keep as a marketeer going forward?
Well, I think, lots is the answer. And
so there's been lots of good stuff, yeah.
A lot of businesses have had to change very swiftly, and my time at Pret last year was probably a great example of that, as in there was a business that you could argue was a brilliant one-trick pony pre-pandemic. So very physical business, bought prime pitch, top dollar locations so that you bumped into them, you know. And clearly with less commuting, offices shut, people out and about less in the last year, 15 months, Pret's almost had to bring itself to the people, if you know what I mean. It can't rely on people walking past a Pret on every corner. So you know, that physical business has had to change very swiftly into a of course physical, because you know it's got to give you the product, but actually it's got to be accessible through delivery, through collection, through mobile pay, through all the digital channels. And so it's got to broaden its accessibility. And we did things last year like put coffee subscription in to encourage frequency, because actually clearly the frequency wasn't there. Those people, many of you would have been 5 days a week in the office. You're on an auto Pret, aren't you? You know, Pret coffee in the morning maybe if you're in that routine, or Pret lunch every lunch. Suddenly you're in the office maybe no times during lockdown, but maybe at best 2-3 times a week. So that routine's gone, the habitual behaviour's gone, and so brands, and you know, in this instance Pret, have had to do things to encourage that frequency, and so changing digitally has been a huge part of that.
Okay, thanks, Tony. So we can't really have a discussion today without talking data in marketing, without talking about capabilities and resources. Again, as a point of information, last month at the MMA, we published some findings from a marketer survey in conjunction with Ernst Young, in conjunction with EY, on data maturity. And what we were really trying to find out is how mature did CMOs and their teams feel that they were in various areas around consumer data. And really what we were looking to do was, as the MMA, was trying to understand the tug of war between growth through data-driven strategies and the risk of incorporating and taking on data within the organization. So as you can see from this chart here, the respondents, which were sort of say from marketing departments around the globe, pretty much 9 out of 10 felt very mature, very comfortable around questions of governance, privacy, security, compliance. And thank God for that, no surprise with GDPR, CCPA and the rest. That was 9 out of 10. But when we then got into, we had a whole load of data, but this is just a summary from it. When we then got into how confident, how comfortable, how mature did they feel that they had the right teams and resources in place around the capabilities needed to take the data that they were getting and the information and turning it into insights to really grow their business, their feeling was 3 out of 10 felt that they were mature. So there was an awful lot of work to be done in this particular area. So there's a question on this, Tony, from your perspective, and again, you know, you've worked in retail, you've worked in tech and QSR, and currently with at Pizza Express. You know, how are you and your businesses future-proofing yourself so that you can build these capabilities and resources to take advantage of data in the future?
Well, I think broadly speaking, I think the roles have become more technical in the last 5-10 years. It feels like the roles are more specific in your team. They're more detailed, and they're maybe narrower. So you need that technical ability and that knowledge and experience. And then it becomes very worrying if people leave, of course. So without being too cliched, I mean, you've got to build the best possible brand that people want to be at and people want to stay at, but also individuals have got to see progression and learning and all that stuff that makes them want to hang around, and so you don't lose that experience. And I think, you know, that is the danger. The bizarre upside, and it's pretty dark upside, I'd say, is that I heard yesterday that 11% of the advertising industry is no more in terms of people working in advertising at the start of the pandemic to now. So there's a lot of talent out there. There's a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of people with skill sets that will be eminently employable. But I think, you know, retaining people is always the answer. Retaining the best people is all the answer, and upskilling them whilst they're with you.
Okay, we've got the last 5 minutes or so, Tony, so I've got a couple more questions for you. This one's around data, strategy, and insights. As I mentioned earlier, really turning data information into insights, into strategy to help build the business. Again, share some insight into how you're approaching that and making that really an integral part of the marketing function.
Yeah, and okay, well, to that point, I'd say strangely, its best place is outside the marketing function, and I would have always been very resistant to this. In fact, I was very resistant to this in one of the businesses I was at. But actually, my learning from the mothership business that owned us was if you sit strategy and insights away from all the functions, then they're completely at liberty to make the best recommendations. They're not tainted by bosses like me saying, here's the answer, or you should do this. That they are completely impartial. They're finding out and learning stuff about your business and making the right recommendations without bias. And that's, you know, that's got to be the key point. So they're using the data and the research and, you know, and outside market forces and what they've got at their disposal to make the best possible recommendations for change. And they're not, you know, they're not tainted by people like me.
Okay. And then our final one is that although we've been talking about the future of modern marketing, you know, current hot topic is around brand purpose. And I've seen various data points that currently those brands that have stayed true to their purpose by their actions in the last couple of years have sort of won through. You know, consumers can walk out of stores when they're open or click away to those that don't connect brand purpose to their actions. So final question for you is that, you know, as a CMO, and as you focus, how do you help focus your teams really that all the things that you're doing is really on purpose, the purpose that you've all agreed and signed up to?
Well, I, hopefully I've come across as being very pro-brand as part of this chat. I think the brand is still everything, and you talked about great stories well told earlier at the start of today's presentation, and that is still true and will always be true. And the tech, CRM, data, all that stuff should only enhance that. Should only make those stories better. And if it's not, then actually you're just better coming up with some big idea and telling it and not using any data. So I think the core of quality of brands has to be those stories really well told.
Thanks, Tony. We could have talked for hours, I'm sure. We don't have hours. We don't have very long. In fact, our time is now up, and I don't want to keep these good people and overstay our welcome. So it remains for me to say thank you, Tony, for that. I'm not sure if we've got time for questions. I'll be around here if anybody wants to ask me any questions or some more about the MMA. Thanks for your time. Enjoy the rest of your day, and more importantly, enjoy this evening.
Thanks very much.
We do have time for one question. I've got someone coming through, if I can put one to you. This is from Paula, and it's about brand purpose. She asks, does every brand really have to have a purpose? We've heard so much talk about it, but do all brands really need this?
You might not need a purpose if you're a single brand in a single sector with no competition, and you're you're the go-to brand, but
there aren't many of those.
If you're competing against anybody or looking to grow share, you've got to find some way of standing out and being distinct from your competitors and others around you, and that requires a clear purpose. I think it possibly requires a purpose that's beyond profit. It's a purpose, something at the soul that makes the brand real.
Chris, any thoughts?
Yeah, just very briefly, I think the brand purpose gives a reason for your team, employees, partners, and whatever to come to work, and I think it also gives you, a focus on which to the actions that you take as a business. It gives you a route map for those actions. Therefore, it's important.
Fantastic. In that case, both of you, thank you so much. That was absolutely superb.
Thanks very much.